So back to our my first compose, which we created before if you've been following us. So it is indeed an Android compose project, and then we attached a Kotlin module. So if you are shaky on how to create a Kotlin module, just go back to the previous videos where we're setting things up and I'll show you how to create a Kotlin module inside of a compose or Android application. It's just the easier way for us to learn Kotlin separately, but still inside of the main Android project, okay, in Android Studio. And if you also have been following us, you recognize that we also have another options to run Kotlin code, which is Kotlin Playground. So if you go to Google and type in Kotlin Playground, you will have Playground, as the name implies, where you can start typing in code and run on the browser. So those are two options, and I chose this option for now, which is to use Android Studio, but you could very well just use Kotlin Playground. Whichever way works fine. Okay, so here we are. As you can see here, we have the main entry point fun main, and then we have this print, which if we run, it's going to print, which if we run, right, let's run again, it should print hello Kotlin. Now the other thing, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to pin this console here to the right, so it's much easier for us. So I'm going to move, I'm going to say right top like this, so it's side by side. Let's close this down so we have more space, and maybe make this a little smaller because it doesn't really need that much. Okay, we can adjust as we go. At the center of any programming language, there is what we call variables. Okay, so a variable essentially is a container that holds a value at a certain point in time. So how do we create a variable? Well, there are two ways to create variables in Kotlin. In fact, there are many different ways when you look into types and so forth. But a basic variable that can hold something, we start by saying var. And you can see as I type, and go back and say var, you can see that the IDE, Android Studio, knows exactly what you're trying to do. At least it looks at what you're trying to do and gives you some suggestions. Okay, so we say var, and in this case, let's say name. And then we assign this variable to something. Okay, in this case, I can assign Kotlin as such. So what we're saying now is that name, the variable name, a bucket, contains Kotlin string. Now we know this is a string because we have double quotes, and inside we have characters, which is a string in this case. Now to invoke this variable so that we can print the content of this variable, very simply, we can just get rid of all of that. Now it's very simple. All we do, we just get rid of all of that and say name as such, and you can see it even gives us the suggestion of the variable. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and run. We should see Kotlin. Very good, it works fine. Now if we wanted to do something more extravagant, meaning we want to interpolate or concatenate or kind of have a variable inside of a string, let's say I want to say hello and then pass in the values of this name variable. To do that in Kotlin, you'll have to use the $sign to say now I am interpolating, or I want to invoke an external variable that it's going to be run inside of the string. So if I type name, then what's going to happen, let's go ahead and run again. We should see now, say hello Kotlin, right? So if whenever you want to invoke a variable that has something, you must interpolate, or you must add the $sign and the variable name. You will notice something. We have this yellow squiggly line. What does that mean? If you hover over, it will say that variable is never modified and can be declared immutable using val. What's it all about? Well, the compiler is trying to help us out. It's saying, well, okay, so this variable here, you said its name and passed in a value that's been held inside of this bucket, this variable, but you never really changed it. So this is kind of redundant. Make it variable or var. We should change it to val. This tells us there's another type, right, of variable in this case that we can use that is not mutable, which means cannot be changed, because that's what it's saying here. It's like, well, this, you never changed it, meaning I never came here and said name is equal to something else, such as John or something like that. If you do that, notice now the squiggly line is gone, because it's saying, okay, you are okay, because it says, okay, that makes sense. You created this variable, right? And you modified it. So that's fine to use var. Okay. Now, if you run this, what's going to happen is the compiler takes the last assigned item or contents of that variable. So it's no longer Kotlin. In fact, that's how you can see here, in this case, that Kotlin is grayed out because it says it's redundant, because we actually changed it right after that. Okay, so whenever you're creating variables that you know you're not going to change them you should, instead of using var, you should use val. So in this case, I'm going to get rid of this. We'd say val, my name, just for instance, just to change a few things. And I'm going to say John. So now val will have no problem. In fact, if I comment this out, / like that, notice we have a problem because name is no longer available. So let's change that, what we call it here, to my name, and then all is good. Val is fine, and we don't see that squiggly line to say this should be val, because it isn't a val, we never change. Now, this way, this is the mutable variable type. This is immutable, meaning you can change, and I'll show you. If I try to say my name and set it to something, notice right away the compiler is going to say, well, you cannot do that, right? You can't reassign something that is immutable. You cannot change something that cannot be changed. So in this case, you hover over, it's going to say change to var. If you click change to var, then it's changed to var, which means then we're allowed to do this. Okay, I'm going to just go back to what we had before. Okay, so these are the two main types that we need to be aware of. Okay, this is mutable, and you want to say val. When we use val, that is immutable as such. In fact, I'm just going to get rid of this because that's going to give us an error. And there you have it. So you learn two things here: mutable and immutable ways to create variables. And the Kotlin documentation says whenever in doubt, just use val, right? Immutable. That's what they recommend you to always use. But there are times you want to change them right away, those variables. Then in those cases, of course, you want to use var.